All right. Welcome. Today is April 30th, 2024. I'm Trevor, founder Hearts and Minds. We are talking about how do you know if you're on the track of progress, and the signs of success is really the theme of tonight. And the only way to really gauge whether or not we're making progress is we have to ask some really tough questions. It's really easy to point at results. It's really easy to point at ranking. It's really easy to just point at a tournament finish that you may have had and say, oh, yeah, I'm getting better. Well, if you're being really honest, sometimes the best results not always equate to I'm growing the right way as I should as an athlete. You can have great results, but you're not playing really tough competition, and therefore, maybe our level is maybe not improving. So what we're going to do is I've prepared a short slide deck with several really good areas that we're going to focus on to ask some tough questions. So when you're watching this call, here's my goal for you directly. I want you to pick out two areas, maybe three. We're only going to look at five tonight, but I want you to pick out two, maybe three of these areas, and I want you to key in on the questions asked. And then all I want you to do, I'll give you a little bit of time, and I want you to answer the best that you can. If you struggle with the answers, no problem. Once we finish this slide deck, we'll kill the recording and we'll have it robust Q&A. If you're watching this on the replay, I encourage you pause this presentation as we go through on the areas you really want to key in on, because I'm going to go somewhat quick. So we'll get started. So tonight's call is all about, again, signs of success. So how do we know if we're really improving? George, you able to see it okay? Presentation good?
Cool. Yeah, just popped on.
So how can we be sure if we're growing? We're looking at five areas, guys. Let's look at the first one, emotional awareness. Question one, how well do you understand and manage your emotions during training and competition? So I see sometimes athletes where the emotions will be really, really high and then sometimes not so high, or really, really strong. And then other times it's like there's no self-control there. So what is the goals that you're working towards? And are we tracking, hey, am I managing my emotions well or not? And am I understanding how I'm reacting to certain things that happen on and off court? Number two, am I able to regulate my reactions in different situations? So sometimes our reactions can vary from match to match, tournament to tournament. How do I know that I'm stacking progress from one day to the next, 1 month to the next, one season to the next? What are the signs? What are the ways that you can grow? What are the things that you can be working on right now? And you may think to yourself, well, Trevor, that's a really hard thing to answer. It may be you in the very beginning until you start thinking about it differently. See, every single day, data happens, events happen. You can start keeping track of, from an emotional control standpoint, you can start keeping track of, okay, if I'm a athlete where I really emotionally react a lot, today what I'm going to do is I'm going to count how many times I'm emotional. And then what I can start doing is I can start focusing on, okay, today I reacted 5 times total. Okay, tomorrow I'm going to work on 4 times. And what you do is you start working on how many times you're going to react negatively. And by the way, it's not just about the negative. We can also talk about the positive emotion. I see sometimes athletes, they'll suppress so much emotion that they don't allow themselves to actually compete freely and celebrate the points that they should, and actually like get into the rhythm of the match, rhythm of the tournament. So it's not just the negative side that we're really checking in on. It's also the positive. So emotional awareness. Second one, goal clarity. If you are an athlete, I hope that you've set some goals. If you haven't, contact us, let us know. We'll be happy to work with you and set some really effective goals. But how are you managing your short versus your long-term goals? And are you clear about them? So one of the problems I see a lot of athletes do with goals is they aren't very clear about what they're achieving. They say, well, I'm going to improve my UTR. Great. That's a good goal. But like, what does that mean? That's so vague. Well, I want to increase my UTR from a 7.0 to a 7.7. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. We're getting closer. But you're still vague. It's not as clear. By when will you do that? And by how will you do that? That's what I mean by clarity. Okay, well, let's say this, and it's not just UTR based. Let's say it's emotions, because we just talked emotions. Let's say I'm going to increase my UTR by half a point by the end of summer, which is, let's put a date on it, July 30th. Okay, that's clear, it's measurable, it's specific, and then, oh yeah, let's throw an emotion with it. I'm going to reduce my negative emotions on court down to one negative outburst per match by the end of that time. Now we're talking clarity. Now we're talking about trackable goals. Now we're talking about gauging success. Again, the theme of the night is, how are we gauging success and how are we measuring? So are we clear about my short and long-term goals? And again, if you're not working with any right now, no problem. Let us know, especially after this call. We've got 3 mental coaches on this call. We'll happily, work with you guys and treat this like a legit one-on-one session. Number 2, am I regularly checking them? Kind of hard to check a goal if you haven't set one. So if you don't have one, again, you got to set one. And let's get really specific. If you haven't, great, high five. I'm glad you do. But are you regularly checking them? Are you visually seeing them on a frequent basis? When I work with one-on-one clients, the best success I've ever had with athletes and goals is they have them posted right next to the light switch in their room. And they also have them on the mirror in the bathroom. And they also, the older athletes that can drive, I have them write the top 3 goals that they're really passionately working on. I have them put it on their steering wheel in their car. Why? Well, because I'm checking regularly and I'm seeing them all the time, and I'm constantly reminding myself what I'm working on and what I'm chasing down. So are we checking them? And here's another one, I guess I didn't even add on this question, but it's important. Am I updating them? What happens if you achieve your goal really early? Great. Time to set a new goal. What happens if you miss it? No problem. Set a new one. So am I updating my goals regularly? Number 3, fancy word, self-efficacy. Really what this is inner confidence. How confident am I in my ability to execute when the situation calls for it? I got to go down the line today against this opponent because going cross court, and my patterns, it's just not working. I got to go down the line today. How confident are you that you can pull the trigger and hit the shot that you need to hit? We're not talking about the result. We're just talking about, do you have the confidence in yourself and the inner belief that I can pull the trigger and this ball is going to go where I want it to go? We can talk lots about how to build confidence, how to develop it, but really it comes down to, do I believe that I have confidence in my shots, in my game, in my game plan, in my game style? Again, how are we tracking results and progress? We got to have a way to constantly check in on some of these inner things. So again, I hope that you're paying attention. You can at least pull 2 or 3 of these areas out. Again, the third one, self-efficacy or confidence. Number 2 on this is, what strategies do you personally use to build your confidence, even when you don't feel like it? I really highlight that one because a lot of times athletes will just, they'll want to fall in line and say, well, my confidence is really a result on how I feel. Well, sorry to break it to you, you're probably not going to always feel at your best. Sorry to break it to you. But hey, what can we do about that? We can work on the right skills and the right mindset to help us even when you don't feel at your best. And I give this kind of a talk a lot to many different athletes in different sports about coaches, programs, universities, even the professional teams. So many athletes will grow up hearing audibly from coaches, hey, how did that feel? Hey, how'd that shot feel? Hey, whoa, boy, I like the way that ball flew. How'd that feel? And if you're careful and you pay attention, you raise your awareness to this, guys, the next time you go on court, the next time you have a private lesson, the next time you have a small group lesson, pay attention. How many times do you hear the word feel? I would venture to guess you hear that a lot. And what that does, if you're not careful, it can put a subconscious belief that I have to feel good in order to hit a good ball. I played baseball. I played college baseball. And let me just tell you, not every single base hit I had in my life felt good. It didn't. There's a lot of base hits that I was successful, but it didn't feel good. I get jammed on the handles and it causes terrible vibration. I hit it on the end of the cap and it squirts through the infield, or I hit a little blooper over the third baseman that should have been caught. Those hits don't feel good, but yet I was still successful. Guess what? You may hit a framed shot winner and then you like are mad at yourself because it's like, oh, that didn't feel good. Something's wrong. I know I'm being silly, but that happens. So it's really important for us as athletes to move away when you're developing confidence, move away from just it's not just a feeling. It is a skill that can be developed. So the question back to you, how are you building confidence? And if you don't have ways, feel free, circle this, highlight this, reach out to us, let us know, and we can help you develop confidence. Fourth area, feedback. Are you open to critical feedback from your coaches, from parents, from yourself, from teammates, from perhaps from video? Are you open to receiving feedback? And again, it's easy to say, yeah, I'm open to feedback, but how do you respond when you get feedback? Do you close up and like get really self-defensive and really protective and like analytical, or are you willing to receive and actually ponder and ask the tough questions? And by the way, I don't always agree that all feedback is always good. I think it's worth considering and worth always interpreting and thinking about, and then having a conversation and a dialogue with about whoever's providing feedback. Again, speaking from a baseball standpoint, there are a lot of coaches that teach a lot of different ways to throw a fastball. Okay. Same with hitting a baseball. There's a lot of different techniques. Don't believe me? Watch any Major League Baseball game and you watch guys hit, and you'll see different stances, you'll see different approaches. And guess what? Tennis is the exact same. You're going to have a lot of different ways to teach a forehand, a lot of different ways to teach a backhand. I know, George, you've worked on your strokes from when you were playing high school to junior college, D1 JUCO to D1 at the University of Indiana. I know you worked on a lot of different techniques with different coaches. There's different ways. So my suggestion always is, are you open to it? And are you open to having a dialogue and a conversation? Number two, are you effective at being able to implement areas of feedback and use it into your game? So it's one thing to like take feedback. It's another thing to use it. Are you effective at using and utilizing feedback? And again, these are high level questions that is designed to get you to be thinking and really turn the mirror back on you and evaluating, okay, am I getting closer to my goals? Am I getting closer to where I want to be? Or am I just spinning my wheels? What we want is we want progress. We're not after perfection, we're after progress. Well, kind of hard to know if I'm getting closer to the end goal if I'm not measuring it and evaluating on a constant basis. Fifth area, resilience. This is Dave's favorite one. Resilience and adaptability. How do I respond to setbacks? How do I respond when things don't go my way? How do I respond when I get really tough pieces of feedback? How do I respond when I lose, even though I was projected to win? How do I respond when things are really tough? And number two, how do I bounce back in real time? How do I bounce back in real time? What do I tell myself? What do I visualize? Do I see am I blinded by the only thing I can see in front of me is failures? Or do I see hope? Do I see opportunities to improve? Do I see ways to get better? Last but not least, I saved this one, last but not least, and this is on results, because again, if we're talking about how do we measure success, we have to consider the results. Let's be real. We're playing a sport that success from a outcome standpoint does matter. It does. Very few people I've ever met in my life go into a tournament hoping that they don't lose, hoping that they lose on the first match, first game, first thing, and they just want to tank everything from point one. Very few athletes I've ever talked to have that mentality. You know, I was sharing this with a business leader here in Houston a couple weeks ago, and we were just laughing about chasing success and setting some really good, meaningful goals. And I just joked with him. I said, listen, you know, very few people I've ever talked to in the business world set goals in order to like lose money in a business and go bankrupt. Like that's not the goal. The goal is to improve. The goal is to find ways to have success. So, hey, we have to look at results. So what ways, this should be answered in a two-part from you. What ways have I grown and developed as an athlete? I want you to write down, if this one really speaks to you, I want you to write down 2 bullet points. What are concrete ways that you have grown and developed as an athlete yourself? And number 2, are your recent results a good measurement of your growth? I think sometimes we can feel really good about recent success and recent results. It's like, yes, I'm doing right. I'm doing well. I'm playing well. I'm winning tournaments. I'm winning matches. Yes, it is. It is a good metric. Yeah, absolutely. But I'll tell you what, when I started my senior year playing college baseball, I was hitting the number 3 spot on our team, hitting the power spot. And I started out the year hitting like 6 for 29. My batting average was terrible, absolutely terrible. So in that moment, in those first, I think it was like 7 or 8 games, is those first 7, 8 games a good metric on growth for me? Well, no, not if I'm looking at the results. But if you knew the full story, you would have known that I had 3 home runs robbed. You would have known that I had two or 3 line drives that were caught in the outfield that people laid out for and dove for. I laid down 2 or 3 perfect drag bunts and I got thrown out. I had several, you know, other successful things that it didn't show up in the stat sheet. So sometimes the metrics and the results not necessarily is the best way to measure success. Number 3, what areas do you need to continue to develop to reach your full potential? And again, I would answer these if this is the area that you want to focus on. What I would do is I would really dig in and find out, okay, I want to add 2 bullet points to each of these for feedback and ways to answer. So what are areas that you need to continue to develop? One good question to ask is, what is coaches constantly reinforcing or sharing with you? What is parents, perhaps? What's a doubles teammate? What is the video feedback that you see? What are 2 areas that you need to continue to develop? And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dave and George. I need to fill up my water cup, and I'll be right back, guys.
What's up, guys? So, does anyone have any questions about any of the things that we went over? Anything that really stuck out to you that you'd want to, get some more information on or, learn more about? Does anyone have anything?
I have a question.
What's up?
What's the best way to get out of your negative self-talk or thoughts?
Ooh, okay. That's a very good one. That's a very good one. I have a good answer. Dave, you want to take a stab first or?
Sure, I can. Who asked the question? Was it Cam?
Sophie, I believe.
Sophie, awesome. So, what are some of the best ways to get out of your negative self-talk? I think the first step is to notice some of your thoughts. Where are they coming from? They could come from multiple angles, but when is the frequency of these negative thoughts? Is it during a performance? Is it during practice? Is it before the actual event? I think that sometimes we can get in our head, I think me in particular, surrounding not wanting to do something. Like for me, a lot of the negative self-talk happens before, example, I go for a run. Right. And before I go for a run, I really don't want to. My legs feel heavy. I just ate. I'll find excuses to not do it. But then when I'm actually doing it, it's fine. And it kind of cools down. So, Sophie, I want to ask you, when do you see some of those negative thoughts pop up for you?
Probably like during or even like a little bit after the performance, because then I look at my past performance and kind of get frustrated about it.
Gotcha. Yeah. So what I'm hearing from you is that you're not doing as well during the actual performance and then maybe beating yourself up after the performance. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I used to do that too, George. I kind of see some head nods from you as well. I think one of the best ways
Oh yeah.
I think one of the best ways to stop that negative self-talk is to really just think to yourself, are my thoughts accurate? And to be honest, they might be, right? But if you're telling yourself, I suck, or I'm not good at this, or I should quit, then it's probably not the best thought. But if your thought is, wow, my forehand is really off today, that may be an accurate thought, and it may not be as negative as you think. What I would do is I would follow up that thought with a little bit more of a positive or tactical reframe. So it's not just saying everything's going to be great. I'll just keep working my forehand and I'll get there eventually. Maybe, but maybe I would say is what you could do is just to say, you know what, my forehand's not working. Maybe I should put a little bit different angle on it. Again, as an example. And that like tactical self-talk is kind of the nice little neutral that I would go for because our negative thoughts sometimes are actually accurate. Right. But if we're getting too carried away on our negative thoughts to where they're, kind of you're damaging your character, you're saying, damaging your self-worth, saying, I'm not good enough, I can't do this, that's when I would step in with some positive self-talk. But if it's really just like, my forehand's kind of off today, I would reframe that into some instruction. What's some way that I can keep going and then motivate yourself from there. So, look, Sophie, there's no really good formula for this. It's to notice first and then replace second. But what you replace that with, I would put some thought into that. George, over to you. Hopefully, I left you some meat on the bone
Yeah.
there.
No. Oh yeah, got a little meat. Yeah, no, awesome, awesome responses. And it kind of rang a little bell for me is, you get a lot of those negative thoughts after playing a match. And that's something that I really, really struggled with, especially during like my teenage years, is I'd come off the court and if I thought that it was a bad match, then in my mind, it was a bad match. Or in all reality, I did play a bad match. I would still think, oh my God, this is a bad match. Until I had a coach I was working with. He's like, hey, after your matches, either you think they're good or they're bad, especially the ones where you're very, very negative about, I want you to sit down and try to find the good in the bad. And I'm like, well, like, what does that mean? I'm like, he goes, that's literally what it sounds like. He goes, you come off the court, you figure out, you think that you're playing a really, really bad match. But he goes, in all reality, did you tank the match? I'd be like, no, I didn't tank the match. I tried. It just, nothing was clicking, nothing was working. He goes, okay, focus on what was clicking, what was working. Because if you didn't give up, you didn't tank the match, I guarantee there's some good things that came from that. And so when I started going through that after some of my quote unquote bad matches, trying to take a little bit more positive tone to it of like, okay, even though this was a bad match, I still improved. I still got better. So really looking and focusing on finding the good in a bad situation, especially after a tough match, really, really helped me with that. So yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. Yeah, great question.
What other questions do you guys have? Any other questions about the content or I don't know, we could talk about life. What's been going on recently?
We'll do this real fast. If anybody has any other questions, feel free, hit us up with them. If not, no problem. I will go ahead and stop the recording for recording's sake, and then we can move and pivot. So any other questions per tonight? Measuring success.
I actually have a question.
Go
So
for
we were talking like earlier about like when you hit a frame shot and it was just like kind of lucky and say if it was like a winner. And like sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, like that was so lucky and it kind of view it negative, but like sometimes I feel like relief, like I'm like glad that happened because like if it happened on an important point, like how am I supposed to view that?
Let me tell you from other sport first, and then I'll see if you can answer your own question in your own unique way. Okay.
Okay.
A basketball player has a contested 3-point shot and they're rushed and they shoot a little bit off balance, and instead of swishing it, it actually banks in. It's a 3-pointer. He banks in. And then he runs down the court and he does this. What's it look like in the stat sheet? Cam, what's it look like in the stat sheet?
Like not good. Like, well, like, I mean, he made it, which
In the-
counts.
In the s-
Yeah.
in the statistic sheet, what does it show? Field goal made, doesn't it?
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay. A baseball player or a softball player, per my example, I get a curveball and I reach for it awkwardly and I put a bat on it and it flares up and over the shortstop and lands right in between the shortstop and the outfielders and it plops. What's it look like on the stat sheet? It looks like a base hit.
Yeah.
That was an ugly hit, but what's it look like? A hit. A golfer hits a ball and they think it goes way too high and then it actually just comes straight back down and maybe it's like 30 yards off from their shot, but it's still in the rough, or sorry, still in the fairway, and they still have a great next shot coming up. What's it look like in the stat sheet? Nothing, just a shot, and they just missed on distance. So what have you noticed from 3 different sport examples so far?
It like looks good on the stat sheet and like it's good. It's just kind of like lucky that you did it, but like it, I mean, it happened. So yeah.
Every single sport has these moments of, in your sport is a frame. In your
Yeah.
sport, it's a net cord winner or net cord loser. Every single sport has these unique things where you can even frame a serve, catches your opponent off guard, and actually is an ace.
Yeah.
Like, I've actually seen that before. That was hilarious. So every single sport has these unique moments. How should you view it? How should you look at it? I would view it the same way that all these other sports do. And they just shrug their shoulders, they laugh, and they say, all right, let's go. That's one for me. And they move-
Okay. Thank you.
and they move on.
Okay.
And one other question for you, Cam. Did you pay for your entire tennis racket or did you pay for just your strings?
I didn't pay for any of it.
All right. So your parents bought the whole racket. They didn't just
Yeah.
purchase the strings. They bought the whole thing. So, if a ball hits the frame, if you shank it, then hey, it still works. It's still a part of the
Yeah.
racket. May not look pretty, but a win is a win.
Yeah.
I'll tell you some of the toughest athletes that I've ever gotten the pleasure of working with. They look at those opportunities as blips on a radar and they smile and they know that as long as they keep playing, the good shots are going to outwin the bad shots. And it's inevitable. It's a part of the game. Maturity has a lot to do with that too. The longer that you play, you'll have more of those moments and opportunities where they happen sometimes. It just happens. And again, I liken your question to a lot of what I experienced in baseball. I could have 3 or 4 attempts to hit the ball against the 3 or 4 at bats today against my opponent, the other team, and I could go 0 for 4, and I hit 4 absolute just line drive shots. And the stat book says 0 for 4 for today. Trevor did terrible today, but I know differently. I know it's not the same sport, but you could play a really dynamite, great match playing really high level tennis and you still get beat 6-2, 6-2. So should we allow the stats and the results to totally dictate how we should feel and how we should think and how we should measure our career? I don't think so. I think it's more complicated than that. And if we want to be really well-rounded on this, like we've got to look at success from all areas. So when you have those moments, if it's me and if I'm on court with you, I give you a high five. I'm like, all right, let's go. Put one in the win column. Let's go. And you keep going.
Okay. Thank you.
I would also, sorry, I know that we answered this question, not to put like more on the topic, but I think that high level athletes are going to see, especially the bank shot, as this like, oh, I can't believe I hit that bank shot, especially basketball players. Like when you hit a bank or on a three, especially if you're playing like outside with your friends, they'll even tell you that it doesn't count. Right? Oh, that doesn't count, right? Or oh, that was lucky. The thing I think that you need to also keep in mind, there's this thing in psychology called self-attribution theory, to which we attribute, I know that's a big word, we attribute the things that happen in our lives to either luck, if they're the positive ones or the negative ones, or based on our own actions, again, positive or negative ones. And I think that the where we can make a mistake is that every shot that you hit was because of the time that you spent in the gym, on the court, studying, going through all these reps. And so I think that for you to attribute a poor shot or a good shot to your work ethic is probably something that would be a positive thing to do, right? Like even if you hit a lucky shot or even if I hit a bank shot, I still have control over that, but it's not really about the outcome. It's about the process in general. So I think that usually if it's a blip on my radar, if I hit the shot to Trevor's point, it went in, awesome, great. I know that maybe next time there are things that I can learn from that to hit maybe a better shot or a shot of my intention. But for something to happen on the court that we would deem lucky, I'd probably look at yourself and say, maybe you're better than you think you are.
Yep.
I like that.
It's a mic drop moment. We beat that one up, guys. Like, well done, mental coaches. Like, let's go. Actually, I mean that's a pretty cool part of sports though, where there's so many unpredictable things that happen. I don't know. I kind of like seeing a bank shot go in once in a while. Anyway, sports is awesome. There's so many unpredictable things that happen, and that's a great question. Great question. Cool. All right. Well, any other questions for this topic or conversation? If not, we'll go ahead and stop the recording and we'll hang around for a few minutes.